Hi everyone, welcome to Difference Frames the World, a channel to see the world differently. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification so you will not miss our videos uploaded every week. Today we talk about the collapse of the petrodollar and discuss whether the US will launch a war against Saudi Arabia for dumping the US dollar as the only transaction currency for its oil. In the 1970s, the US dollar, after delinking with gold, was anchored to petroleum, and since then, it has become a world currency. All nations worldwide had to use US dollars to buy oil, and as a result, the petrodollar has become the foundation of America's global dominance. Without the dollar supremacy, the US could hardly become a superpower with 4% of the world's population. In recent years, more and more countries have abandoned the US dollar as the intermediary transaction currency. Since the Ukraine war started in February 2022, the West kicked major Russian banks out of the SWIFT system, which expedited Russia's de-dollarization process. Russia dumped the US dollar and its economy is not falling apart as the West expected. The size of the Russian economy is small, not enough to challenge the dollar supremacy, but another country, China, is the world's largest economy measured by purchasing power, and it has been pushing its RMB to the world for many years. In the past 7 years, China's cross-border transactions settled in RMB have increased by 3 times. The total RMB settlements in 2023 reach 57 trillion renminbi, equivalent to nearly $8 trillion US dollars. Still, the fatal blow to the dollar hegemony came from Saudi Arabia. On June 5, 2024, Saudi Arabia shocked the world by joining the mBridge project, short for Multilateral Central Bank Digital Currency Bridge Project, a cross-border trial of central bank digital currencies, CBDC, jointly launched by the Bank for International Settlements in China. The Saudi Central Bank has even made a high-profile statement, officially announcing that it has become a fully participating member of the mBridge platform, demonstrating its ambition in the field of digital currencies. The choice of Saudi Arabia is not only a great recognition of the mBridge project, but also a keen insight into and positive response to the development trend of global digital currency. As a financial hub in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia's move will undoubtedly lead the trend of digital currency in the region, and even the world, and promote profound changes in the global financial system. In the wave of digital currency, the Saudi Central Bank is no longer satisfied with the traditional financial system, but is eager to embrace innovation and actively explore the infinite possibilities of digital currency. This decision will not only accelerate the digital transformation of Saudi Arabia's domestic financial ecosystem, but also set a new benchmark for it on the global financial stage, and lead the future development of the global financial industry. The mBridge project is a peer-to-peer trading system, without the need for a third-party intermediary currency. For the two economies of China and Saudi Arabia, the system means that their currencies can be traded directly without the need to use the US dollar as a bridge. Over 130 countries and currency unions have jumped into the arms of this cross-border digital currency pilot program, which heralds a dramatic change in the global financial landscape. Global oil trade is becoming less dependent on the US dollar, a solid step toward de-dollarization. It is a game changer. As the world's largest exporter of finished products and importer of energies and raw materials, China can gradually use its currency, RMB, not the US dollar, when doing business with its trade partners. Maybe someday, US companies will also need to RMB, not green paper, when buying commodities from China. We have said relentlessly that America's global dominance is based on its dollar hegemony, without which it cannot maintain its military bases worldwide. More and more countries have seen the real face of the United States behind the hegemony, ready to draw a line with Washington, D.C. Back in January 2023, Saudi Arabia's finance minister openly announced at the Davos Forum that Saudi Arabia would give up the US dollar, seeking non-dollar currency for oil transactions, and in November of the same year, the Saudis and the Chinese reached a bilateral local currency swap agreement. Iraq followed Saudi Arabia's suit shortly, announcing that it would use the RMB yuan directly to settle its import trade with China. Brazil, the largest country in South America, even reached an agreement with China to completely abandon the US dollar as an intermediate currency, opening a new era of local currency settlement. Russia is more aggressive in the way of de-dollarization. The relationship between China and Russia has been elevated to an unprecedented level politically, but on the economic level, they are even closer, with nearly 95% of bilateral trade settled in Russian rubles and Chinese RMB, compared to less than 3% a decade ago. Argentina, Pakistan, and other countries have also been getting away from the US dollar. Argentina announced the use of RMB to pay for Chinese imports. Pakistan has introduced a new rule of goods for goods, or barter trade with Iran, Russia, and Afghanistan, to deal with the problem of insufficient cash exchange. Iraq's central bank is even more outspoken, saying all internal transactions will be conducted only through the Iraqi dinar, completely abandoning the dollar. Iraq was invaded in 2003 because it wanted to accept the euro for oil sales, and now it wants to dump the US dollar completely. Hopefully, the US will not find another bottle of powder and start a new Iraq war this time. South African Foreign Minister revealed that the BRICS countries are agreeing on a framework that allows member countries to use their currencies for transactions, pointing out that the current international payment system based on the US dollar is unfair and costly. More than half of the world's countries, 135 countries, to be exact, are looking for a new payment system to get rid of the restraints of the US dollar. According to America's long-arm jurisdiction principle, any entities or individuals will be under the U.S. law if they are considered closely related to the United States, and using the U.S. dollar is one of the circumstances that allow the U.S. to do whatever they like to other countries' enterprises and people. Alstom France's Pierucci and Huawei China's Meng Wanzhou are two examples of America's long-arm jurisdiction. For decades, the U.S. has been using the dollar as a weapon to punish countries which refuse to take its side. Iran, Venezuela, and Russia, to name a few, suffered a lot for lack of US dollars. Even India, a country threatened by starvation, has to sell its rice to the rest of the world to get US dollars so it can buy things from other countries. In the past decades, the US gradually established its global dominance based on the petrodollar, and any country or region challenging the dollar has been suppressed fiercely by the United States. The financial world is expecting a significant disruption after Saudi Arabia decided not to renew its 50-year petrodollar deal with the United States. The petrodollar formally died in Saudi Arabia on June 9, 2024. However, it is by no means the end of the game. The de-dollarization process is still ongoing. Let us go back to the question we raised at the beginning of the video: will the US attack Saudi Arabia as it invaded Iraq in 2003? Our answer is no. Unlike Iraq 2 decades ago, Saudi Arabia has developed solid relations with China and Russia, and it has even improved and resumed diplomatic ties with Iran. Although the Saudis decided not to continue the petrodollar deal with the US, it is still a major supplier of crude oil to the States, and the US needs Saudi Arabia's support in the Middle East. Moreover, the US is not as potent as 20 years ago, and it cannot even defeat the Houthis in the Red Sea. The last but not the least, the US needs to deploy more troops in the Asia-Pacific region to counterbalance China's increasing military power, and it is also forced to strengthen its influence in Europe to oppose Russia. It is unwise for Washington to initiate a war against Saudi Arabia, as it invaded Iraq 2 decades ago, as another war in the Middle East will ruin America's global dominance, which has been quickly diminishing every day. With more and more countries saying no to the US dollar, America's dollar hegemony will gradually end, but it will come true shortly. The world still needs the US dollar as a primary reserve currency. The Enbridge project is a good try, but it takes time to prove its feasibility and creditworthiness, and for countries that want to do business with their local currencies, it is essential to avoid exchange rate fluctuations, and many of them will continue to use the US dollar as an intermediary currency to facilitate international trade. Anyway, it is still too early for us to say that the dollar hegemony has come to an end, even though the petrodollar has become a historic term.